Hey everybody, it's low carb and keto nutrition specialist Amy Berger from 2itnutrition.com, bringing you, as always, keto without the crazy. No business to discuss today. We're just going to jump right into the topic for once. What are alcoholic foods, and do you have any? And if you do, what should you do about them? So the term alcoholic food probably sounds pretty harsh and pretty severe, but I think it's warranted, and I'll explain why as the video goes on. And you can probably figure out what it means without me having to tell you, but I'll tell you what I mean by the phrase alcoholic food. But I will start by saying I will link in the notes below to a video I did a while back about red light, yellow light, and green light foods. And again, you could probably take a pretty good guess as to what that means without me having to delineate for you, right? If you've ever seen a traffic light, red lights, yellow lights, and green lights mean different things when you are approaching in a car, and they mean similar things with regard to certain food items, right? So an alcoholic food, clearly, the simplest definition in my mind is a food that you lose all control over, as if you are an alcoholic with an alcoholic beverage. And please know that I am not trying to downplay the severity of alcoholism or alcohol addiction or abuse. If anything, I'm trying to elevate the seriousness of food addiction and of addiction to specific foods, and to kind of let people know that sense of loss of control, the severity of the addiction and of the sense of being out of control, I think can rival that of an alcoholic with an alcoholic beverage. And I think the consequences are maybe not as bad. I don't think I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but let's put it this way. Food addiction can kill you. Food addiction will not kill you or someone else behind the wheel of a car like drunk driving can, but food addiction, if untreated and unresolved, can kill you via type 2 diabetes over the course of 20 or 30 or 50 years. It can kill you via cardiovascular disease. It can kill you via kidney disease, what have you. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I'm just trying to, I don't want to make anyone think I'm saying, oh, alcoholic foods, like, oh, I can't control myself around Kit Kats, I'm as bad as an alcoholic. I'm not trying to downplay the severity of alcohol, but I'm also I don't want to downplay how severe a food addiction can be. So, okay, now that that's out of the way, alcoholic foods, and the reason we call, and I didn't make up that phrase. That's a phrase that's well known in some groups here and there. We call them alcoholic foods because there are these specific foods that we lose control around in the same way that an alcoholic loses control around their alcohol of choice. And it's the same kind of thought process. This time will be different. I'll just have one. Every alcoholic starts with one beer on a bender. They start with one glass of wine. Every sugar addict, I'll just have one. We've all said it. So even if you don't consider yourself a true food addict or a sugar addict, you might have a specific food or multiple specific foods that are your alcoholic foods, your trigger foods. That's another word. People use trigger food, binge food. I'm choosing to say alcoholic food to hammer home the severity of the situation. And I really encourage you to watch that video I did on the red light, yellow light, green light foods, because it's kind of the same thing. That there are certain foods that are really nutritious, good, wholesome foods, and you have no problem with them. And even if you quote unquote overate on sirloin steak, or you overate, to the point of physical pain on broccoli, The metabolic consequences of that and the just overall consequences, not really that bad, compared to massively overeating or binging or whatever word you want to use with some other kind of food. And the interesting thing, so yeah, I was saying the red light, yellow light, green light. Obviously, watch the video, but obviously the green light foods are your totally safe foods, no problem. The yellow, gotta exercise a little bit of caution with those. Maybe sometimes you go a little too far, sometimes you don't. For the most part, you can have it in your house. It's okay. And then there's the red light foods, or the alcoholic foods, whatever you want to call them, that you can't have them ever. Ever. Or if you do have them, you know what's going to happen because it happens every single time. It's happened every single time in the past that there is no limiting. There is no controlling the quantity of this food you will eat. You are limited only by the quantity available to you. If you have a small pack available, you eat the whole small pack. If you have a huge pack available to you, you eat the huge pack. If you have 3 huge packs available, you eat 3 huge packs. There's no limit, there's no off switch, there's just no control. There is no sense of control. You are like an alcoholic. You cannot stop for whatever reason, and I won't even get into the reasons. But the interesting thing is that for many people, when they go keto, it's smooth sailing because their alcoholic foods are foods that they are simply not eating anymore on keto at all. It could, the traditional sugar, the cookies, the cakes, the pies, bread, pasta, right? For some people, it's not sugar, but it's the starch. It could be bread, bagels, crackers, pretzels, stuff like that. That's not sweet, but is starchy. And of course, for some people, it is the sugary stuff, the real sweets. And so for some people, by default, keto makes that go away. For some people, they're on the keto straight and narrow most of the time, but then, I bought the pack of cookies or I bought the tub of ice cream. And so going keto does not always stop those tendencies. We still sometimes want to reach for those foods. We still sometimes do reach for those foods. Frankly, despite the time I just spent on that, I don't really want to talk about that stuff because presumably if you're doing keto, you're not eating that stuff. I'm going to assume you're doing keto and you're sticking to it and you're not eating that stuff anyway. So I'm not going to tell you the cookies and chips and stuff are a problem because you're not eating them. And the keto versions of it, the keto brownies and the keto cookies, that's a whole separate issue that I'll stick a pin in and come back to maybe if this video doesn't get to be too long. But from a personal standpoint, and I admit my own personal bias here, I'm more interested in alcoholic foods that we would otherwise totally think are fine for keto or very low carb. And I think I did mention this in that video I did on the red, yellow, and green light foods. I have several foods that are totally appropriate, totally suitable for a low carb or keto diet, but they are not appropriate or suitable for me. They are alcoholic foods for me. And if you're trying to maintain a certain weight or even a certain state of health or trying to establish and maintain certain behaviors and break away from other behaviors, then it doesn't matter what the food is. What matters is your behavior around that food, your actions around that food. I hate relationship. Like, you don't have a relationship with food. Food is not a person. Food is a thing. It's an inanimate object. It's not a thing. I mean, it's a thing. It's not a, I guess you could, other people talk about relationships with food. I don't like that phrase at all. So for me, it doesn't matter if the food is 0 carb or very low carb or what. It matters that it is an alcoholic food for me and I can't control myself. And I will give you some examples. I know I mentioned at least 1 or 2 of these in that other video, and I've mentioned them in many of. If you've watched my channel for a while, you know I've got a mayonnaise problem. I'm not allowed to have mayonnaise in my house because I don't know how to have a tablespoon of mayonnaise. I don't know how to do it. I know how to have half a jar. I know how to empty a jar of mayonnaise in a week. And just to test, just to make sure it was still an alcoholic food, you know, just like Amy, maybe let's make sure that you still shouldn't have this. I bought one a couple of months ago, and yup. Thank you, universe. Thank you, Amy, for teaching myself the lesson that, yep, still an alcoholic food, still can't buy it again. You know, maybe I'll try again 2 years from now, but lesson affirmed, lesson reaffirmed and confirmed, can't have mayo. Same thing with pork rinds. I haven't had pork rinds probably since sometime in October or November of 2020. So it's been a while. I can't have them. I will lose control. Pork rinds are 0 carb, you know, even if you're talking about the ones with seasoning, as long as it's not some crazy sugary seasoning, they're, for all intents and purposes, they're 0 carb. They're not 0 calorie. If I'm trying to lose weight or maintain weight, or trying to get out of the habit of binging on alcoholic foods, then it doesn't matter what the food is. It doesn't matter how many carbs it has. It doesn't matter how much sugar it has. What matters is my behavior and my actions in regard to that food. And so pork rinds are an alcoholic food. Sour cream, perfectly suitable for keto, perfectly fine. Amy Berger does not know how to have a container of sour cream in the fridge and use it as a garnish for keto chili or tacos or whatever, like for just, you know, spicy, yummy, delicious beef with lettuce and cheese, and have like a little scoop of sour cream. Amy Berger doesn't know how to do that. Amy Berger will take a tub of sour cream out of the fridge and grab a spoon and sit on the couch and eat plain sour cream like it's yogurt. It's an alcoholic food. And so I guess something else for me to say about alcoholic foods is that my alcoholic foods are not somebody else's alcoholic foods, and their alcoholic foods aren't mine, right? We all have our own individual triggers that we lose control around. And obviously, most other people can have sour cream because they're not going to eat it like it's yogurt. You know, many other people can have pork rinds because they'll just grab a handful and have it as an appetizer, or have it while they're watching the game, or, you know, have it under, like, some people will make chili, so it's, you know, people used to have like corn chips. Instead of corn chips, you'll have it over a bowl of crumbled pork rinds or something. That works for other people. I can't do it. I can't have those items in my house because I simply can't. I lose control. I lose control every time. And it's much easier said than done to avoid your alcoholic foods if you live alone, which I do. I am very fortunate in that I don't have to ignore other people's food. You know, I don't have a husband or kids or like housemates where, you know, the fridge or the freezer has their stuff in it. Like, it's just mine. So that makes it easier for me. If it is harder, if you live with other people, there's only so many workarounds you can do. You know, the fridge is the fridge. You might have a drawer where, you know, this is mom's drawer, or this is dad's drawer, this is Aunt Susan's drawer, where your snacks and your non-perishables and whatever are in there. And so you don't even have to look at the other stuff, or, you know, everything is fair game, but we know that we have to keep the chocolate and the sweets away from dad, or we got to keep this away from whoever. And so that is in maybe a separate one cabinet, one drawer that the keto person doesn't ever have to look in. None of it's a magical solution when you're a real addict, because we will find it. We will find it. There's no hiding food from a true addict. But Let me see if there's anything else I want to say. Oh, right. I said we would come back to the keto versions and maybe even what to do about some of these alcoholic foods. The if you know that you have a problem with cookies and cakes and sweets and whatever, don't have that problem with keto cookies and brownies and cakes and sweets. Now, again, metabolically speaking, you are better off eating a very, very large quantity of an almond flour cookie made with erythritol and monk fruit than you are eating the real thing that's sugar and flour and who knows what else. But if you're trying to lose weight, that's not really going to help. And forget weight, even forget health, physical health, forget all that. If you are trying to just get to a place where you feel in control, where you don't feel like an out of control food addict or sugar addict or food alcoholic, if you will, if you just want to feel like you are in control rather than these foods being in control, then that's another perfectly legitimate reason to completely avoid the keto-fied versions of the stuff you were addicted to in your high carb life. I've said before, don't trade a sugar addiction for a monk fruit addiction. So, now, which is not to say that no one should ever eat that stuff. There are people who can have one cupcake and not want any more cupcakes. Like, they really do exist. So if you were that person and now you're just doing a keto diet, you probably can have one keto cupcake because you never binged on the real stuff to begin with. You're not going to binge on the keto stuff. You just wanted like a little taste and then you're fine. There's a lot of us who aren't like that. We can't have the one. We want the whole tray, the whole batch, the whole bag or box. So that's with the keto food. And then what to do about these alcoholic foods? You just have to cut off the supply. Don't bring them into your house. Again, easier said than done if you live with people, but to whatever extent you can control your physical environment so that you don't even have access to these things, it helps a little bit because it's not a paradox. It's counterintuitive that when your diet is stricter, it is easier to stick to for some people. There's always exceptions, right? No, there's no blanket rules that are true for everybody, but when you have these, when it's a little flexible and a little loosey-goosey, like, oh, I can have that once a week, or I can have that once a day, and I can have this, I can have that food, but only this much of it this often. That is a recipe for disaster with alcoholic foods because you know there's no such thing as I'll only have the one. I can only have it twice a week. If it's in the house, you're going to have it. You're going to have it every day, or you're going to polish it off on the one day you do have it. You're going to eat all of it instead of doling it out serving by serving. Ain't gonna happen because it's never happened in the past and you've been trying for 10 years with this same dumb alcoholic food. So the way to cut it off is like alcoholics do, or recovering alcoholics, it's abstinence, 100% abstinence. These foods cannot be part of your life. They just can't. How did I stop eating pork rinds? I don't buy pork rinds anymore. I don't even look at them in the store. I kind of like, oh, there they are. I don't even want to go there. I don't even want to have the memory of them. Or if I do, the memory of them now is actually an unpleasant one. It leads me to stay away because instead of remembering how yummy and crispy and salty they are, I remember the aftermath, the repercussions, the binge. When you're in the binge, it's fun, it's tasty, woohoo! When it's over and you are overcome with the shame and the self, I can't believe I did this again. I'm never doing this again. I'm never buying these again. I can't let this happen again. That's not worth it. That very, very momentary pleasure, man, those pork rinds were delicious for 15 seconds. and then I spent the next 2 hours wallowing in shame. No, not worth it. Get the alcoholic foods out of your life, abstain completely. And so, getting back real quick to when your diet is stricter, I personally find this, and I think a lot of other people do too. I'll link to our Keto Made Simple Masterclass. The food list we give people in the Keto Made Simple Masterclass is basically Dr. Westman's famous page 4 diet. It's very strict, but because it's so strict, there's no gray, there's no guesswork, there's no little bit of this, little bit of that. It's yes or no. Is it on the list or not? If it's not on the list, you don't eat it. So it's not I want to say it's not easy, but it is easy. The fact that it is so strict makes it easier because for most people, the foods they lose control with are not even an option. Now, sour cream is on the list. Pork rinds are on the list. So you still, even following that list, you have to know your own individual alcoholic foods. If there's a food you personally can't be trusted around, you can't trust yourself around, that it's not on the list for you. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is, when you give yourself very clearly defined rules and there are no exceptions, it's easier because you don't keep re-triggering, oh, I can have that sugar-free chocolate, just one piece. Because the one piece, first of all, it never stops at one piece. It never is just one. And you have the one and you've reawakened that beast, so you want it again tomorrow and again the next day. And then instead of just cutting it off, get it out. Be done with it. So what else can I say about alcoholic foods? I mean, you have to draw that line in the sand. Those of you who are parents, when you have young children, there's just rules. Bedtime is 8 o'clock, period. 8:02, no, 8 o'clock, mister, put your pajamas on, good and good. There's no messing around. There's no negotiating. You know, you're the adult. You're the parent. Bedtime is now, or now it's bath time. Now it's whatever the thing is. There's no, or hold my hand when we cross the street, period, end of story. There's not a negotiation where like you're going to cross the street by yourself. Don't even think about it, buddy. You know, you have to do that with yourself. If you know that you lose control, you can't have wiggle room. Don't give yourself any. It's not negotiable, period. There's a food that you cannot have, you don't buy it, you don't bring it into your house, done. And that's just the way it is. And I'll tell you one little trick that I can tell you. There are circumstances under which I can have mayonnaise and sour cream, and it's when I'm at a restaurant and they'll bring me that little side cup, and that's all I can have unless I ask for more, which I'm not going to. I'm not going to ask for like 2 things of mayonnaise. But when the quantity is controlled for me, then it's different. But that's what I'm going to say about alcohol foods. Take it seriously. I use the word alcoholic food for a reason. Trigger food is almost oh, it's a trigger food. Oh, it's my binge food. I lose control. I don't think that lends enough gravity and enough weight, no pun intended. It doesn't lend enough severity to the out of control behavior that we have with some of this stuff. So I think calling them alcoholic foods not only gives it the proper gravity, but kind of hammers home the point that you just have to abstain. There's no negotiating. There's no, I'll just have a little bit, or I'll only have it on Thursdays, or no. That's not what alcoholics do when they're recovering. There's none. You abstain, period. So if you have alcoholic foods, think about it. I'm sure you do. Think about maybe how severe they are. Maybe they're not that bad. Maybe you are okay to have it once in a while. But if you're not, you're certainly not alone. Because I've got plenty of them. And I hate to say this, but my list of alcoholic foods is growing longer as time goes on. I am finding myself to not be able to control my quantity of more and more foods as time goes on. Keto foods. I'm not even talking about carbs. I'm talking about perfectly suitable low carb foods. I'm done talking. See you next time. Check out all the links, the red light, green light, yellow light video, the Keto Made Simple Masterclass, and whatever else I may have mentioned. Go forth and prosper. Just avoid your alcoholic foods. See you next time.